Hey boys and girls, Board now back with you, and on this video I will be talking about episode 5 of the limited series Little Fires Everywhere from Amazon Prime, and this episode is called Duo, and Duo is the name of the artwork, the photograph which Mia sold in the previous episode because she was obviously desperate for money to support the case involving her friend, whose name I've sort of forgotten, but her friend and her legal battle to reclaim her daughter. So, and that particular piece of art, that photograph, becomes like the source of much of the drama in this episode, because it basically, because of this whole thing, and partly because she finds out that Isabel has been hanging around a lot at the Warrens and she's been like Mia's assistant for a while, which is news to Elena when Mia tells her at the start of the episode. So this gets Elena's back up, and obviously you've got all the stuff going on with the legal case ongoing. We have a scene in this episode where, and I'm not sure quite how true to life this would be, but while the whole thing's going on, like a decision has been made, then the original mother, whose name I forget, has to have like visitation rights, so she has to have like an hour with the child, sort of thing, while the case is sort of ongoing. So we have a brief scene with that. So things are coming to a head, and Elena's like really furious at what Mia's been doing and the whole situation with Linda. So it sort of leads to going kind of AWOL in a way and going off to New York, and that is to look into Mia's background and try and find some dirt on her, in a way, trying to find out if she is really what she claims to be. She's part of this is out of anger, but I guess it is her journalist instinct kicking in as well. Then she maybe feels there is a source here, then there could be a story, sort of thing, even though she's not doing it maybe for a story. She's obviously doing it for personal reasons. But yeah, despite Bill's warnings and telling her not to go off to New York, she of course does that anyway, and she does her own like investigation into the history, because the photo itself is of, well, it appears to be Mia, even though Mia sort of denies it to Isabel at one point in the episode, but it certainly appears to be her, and it's a photograph of her pregnant, basically. And so, as I said, Elena flies off the handle and goes all the way to New York and starts digging around. And the flashback, actually, at the start of the episode, because everyone has had one, is actually from mid-70s and Paris, and we get a nice bit of disco music, because we see a young Elena, and she's with her college boyfriend named Jamie, and we see them in the club together, and then they go back to the apartment, sleep together and stuff. But we sort of see them have a breakup, essentially, because they've got different ideas for the future, because she wants to go back to America. They've obviously been having something like a gap year, or maybe that they've sort of arranged so that they spend one semester or something in Paris, something like that, some sort of arrangement. And she kind of gets upset because he wants to stay in Paris, and she doesn't. She wants to stick to the original arrangement, which then go back to the States. So it ultimately leads to them having a breakup. And this becomes relevant in the episode because Jamie is now in New York. He works at a magazine, one of the top magazines, and I think that's what he does. I wasn't quite clear actually. What I got the impression it was either that or he did something that involved, investigating that. I think it was either that or a political role. Actually, I could be wrong. It might have been something more political, but in any case, that opening becomes relevant because when Elena goes to New York, she looks him up, and so I'll talk about that sort of plot first because she's obviously doing this digging around about the photograph and the past, and she essentially wants to find out, did Mia really go to the school? Was she lying about that? There's like an amusing comedy scene where she bribes like a librarian with Magnolian cupcakes. Who knew such a thing existed? But she gets around the librarian that way and gets her to give her like a look at like the school records from the early 80s when Mia supposedly attended the school. And then later on, when she like drops in on Jamie, because she has this this flash, this idea in the cab. I'm pretty sure he is a journalist. Actually, I think he mentioned then in the past he might have worked as like a correspondent, like a politician, but I'm pretty sure now he's like a journalist. So, but anyway, because I think she gets the idea of, she says to the cab driver, "Hey, is the New York Times near here?" And it is. So she kind of drops off. She gets him to drop him off there, and it's actually a nice sort of twin shot, which I'll come back to because we see like Mia and also Lexi in the shot, and the one of Elena is her like doing her makeup and hair and getting all ready to look pretty. So she's obviously going to use the fact that he's an ex-boyfriend to her advantage. And I mean, there's definitely a bit of flirtation because she asks him, can you look into Mia and background and information? And she says, "I'll make it worth your while. I'll buy you a drink." And he says, "Well, isn't that worth dinner?" And so she agrees, "Okay, dinner." So they go off to dinner later. And they really start hitting it off again. But the big revelation about Mia from his research is then apparently her brother died in the past from a car crash, and her brother, his name was Warren, and of course Warren is the surname of Mia, or the surname she's using. So something clicks in Elena, and she's obviously thinking that Mia has made up her surname, like just taken her brother's first name to come up with like this sort of fake surname, which actually is interesting because it connects to something in the episode where another character uses the surname for her own sort of purposes, who isn't part of that family. I'll get to that in a moment. So there's this whole thing where they're sort of flirting, they get drunk, and it's sort of odd because I definitely got the impression that then he was interested in her that way, that then he wanted something to happen, but then she was maybe just using him for information. So I never actually got the impression she would go through with it and do anything beyond a bit of flirting and a bit of catching up. And it's almost like he kind of calls her out on the bullshit. Like, he calls her a narcissist at one point, because at one point she sort of almost kind of is hinting then yeah, let's just sleep together. What the hell? Let's go for it. And yeah, it's just a bit like, yeah, it's almost like he's just basically calling her really self-centered, because she comes up with this whole thing about, I just wanted to see you to see how your life worked out. So that's sort of curiosity, which might go to Elena's like journalist instinct once again. But yeah, it's another very sort of murky scene, which sort of paints her in quite a bad sort of light. But yeah, he really gets mad at her, sort of thing. It says, sort of brings up the breakup, and well, he doesn't necessarily bring up the breakup, but he mentions then, you haven't changed at all. And because that's when she brings up the breakup and says, well, you broke up with me. And he's like, well, I'm not even talking about that. And it becomes clear then, I think what he's talking about is the fact that she kind of gave him an ultimatum back then, in a way. Or maybe there's something which hasn't been revealed yet which happened, but I can only assume from what we've seen in the episode, then maybe he feels like she gave him an ultimatum, and maybe in the end he had no choice but to break up with her. And I think, like a lot of stuff in this shows, it's sort of like shades of grey. Like, I don't think you can definitely say he's totally in the right, and likewise you can't say like she's totally innocent. I think there are different sort of readings, because he's kind of like making the excuse, we were young, it was a breakup, whatever, and he's kind of putting all the blame on her, which I don't think is necessarily fair. But yeah, we get to see some once again some really great stuff with Reese Witherspoon in this episode, because Elena does have this sort of almost meltdown, because she doesn't, even after the stuff with Jamie, she doesn't go back to Shaker. She stays in New York just to do more like sort of digging, and she looks up people from Mia's past. I think either like family members or just people she knew. I wasn't quite sure actually, but the revelation that comes out, which is like the end of the episode, is then Mia was pregnant with someone else's baby, so it seems. So it wasn't her baby. That's kind of like the cliffhanger at the end, which Elena finds out. So you get this stuff where Bill's really worried for her, and she's off all this time. So she's obviously got this dirt now on Mia, so she's really going to use it in the next episode. You would expect she's really gonna turn up the heat. Now, on the Mia side of the plot, she basically tells Izzy then she can't be around there anymore. She can't be her assistant, and that's just because she kind of finds out about Izzy always like coming over when she wasn't there and looking through her things and stuff. So she kind of tells her, sorry, you can't be here anymore. And this sort of impacts on Izzy. Like, she's kind of quite mopey for the rest of the episode. And I think certain things there's only like little scenes in the episode, but she's kind of like being quite off with a lot of characters. Like she snaps at Trip at one point. She catches Lexi leaving not the rich stuff, but the Warrens, which I'll talk about in a moment. And like the final thing we see with her, I think this is one of the more heavy-handed moments, but the idea is that she's been inspired to be an artist by Mia, but because Mia then has kind of rejected her and things have, hit the fan a little bit, her confidence has taken a hit. So we see her then burning her collage at the end, or near the end of the episode. And is that going to be the fire which we started the series with? I'm not too sure. It feels like it might be a bit early for it. We've still got a few episodes, but it's certainly planting those seeds, even if it isn't. But the big stuff with Mia and with Pearl in the episode is then basically Lexi finds out then she's pregnant, because obviously we'd seen her previously have sex with her boyfriend. And she tells Pearl, and Pearl is obviously really supportive. They've been getting closer as a friend. And so Lexi decides to have an abortion. Doesn't tell her family about it because she doesn't feel she can. So Pearl is like really supportive, meets her at the abortion centre, and this is what I was talking about the whole thing with the family name with Warren, because Lexi basically uses Pearl's name to have the abortion, and the reason she gives later is because the doctor doing it knows her mother, so she's worried about that getting back to Elena. And like, credit to Pearl, she doesn't actually make a big deal of that. Like, she's obviously a bit upset at first, but once it's explained, she's like, okay, let's go, sort of thing. And Lexi is really vulnerable in this episode. She doesn't want to go home because she's just come from having the abortion, so she feels like her parents or her father, the mother's gone to New York, like the father will just figure out straight away that something's not right. So Pearl takes her home, and again, I think this is another, because Mia helps, obviously takes Lexi in for the night and is there, I think, for Pearl more than Lexi, because obviously Pearl wants to support her friend. But again, in this episode, Mia is like really preachy, really kind of self-righteous. Like, she's still giving the whole sort of speech to Pearl about, you can't trust these people. They're sort of using like your good nature. Because later on in the episode, it's when like Pearl has gone to see Trip, and they've kind of had like a sort of a heart-to-heart about the whole sleeping together previously, and Trip has kind of said he's nervous and stuff, so their relationship is sort of on a more even sort of keel this episode. But it's when she's off seeing Trip and they're talking, like Lexi gets up at one point and she asks for like, well, not for Mia's advice, but she asked me, if you were me, would you do the same? And that's when Mia gets really sharp with, she says, well, I'm not you. And she sort of does go into a bit of a rant saying, oh, you're so spoiled, you've got all these friends, all these options. And it's kind of saying to her, you could have gone to anyone tonight. You didn't have to go. You didn't have to call Pearl. You had lots of people and you're just so privileged. You kind of have all this, and then she makes a point of talking about how for 2 months she was like the housemaid there, cooked the meals, and she never, like Lexi, never said thank you once. And it's this whole thing where yeah, she's just running her down and running down, and again kind of saying that she's just using her daughter sort of thing and stuff like that. And considering what Lexi has gone through, it's really off of me, or at least I think it is, because at the end of the day, Lexi's a young girl and she's in a vulnerable place. It's not really the time to be bringing up all that other stuff. And okay, I mean, maybe Lexi is spoiled, but it's not her fault. I mean, it's through her parents and stuff. It's not really her. And okay, you could say she has this sort of snobby attitude at times. That may be true, but in this situation, I think she is like truly vulnerable, and yeah, it's really off of me in this scene. I guess in a way it's kind of what's interesting about the drama, the fact that Mia as a character, I sort of read her as being a lot more again, shades of grey sort of thing, not as clean cut, not as heroic as as you might think. It's not. And at the same time, although I think in the last couple of episodes Elena has acted pretty badly, I think she's actually been more likable at times than you may think, and I think it does make for a more balanced sort of drama, a bit more interesting. And I will say as well, the actress playing Lexi, some good work in this episode of really selling like the nerves of the character and just how awkward she is and stuff. She really gets that across very well. Jade Pettijohn, I want to say, yeah, that's the name. And yeah, that's pretty much the episode. I think it's pretty strong stuff again. Some sort of good solid drama, and yeah, moving along quite nicely. So that's episode 5 of Little Fires Everywhere. If you've been watching the series, then please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Coming up this week, I plan on doing the next Buffy review, so that's What's My Line Part 2, so I plan to have that out this week. Other stuff you can find on the channel is I started the new HBO version of Perry Mason this week, so the review of episode 1 is up for that. I've been doing the German sci-fi series Spied, so that's up on the channel now. First couple of reviews for that. And coming up soon, I will also be doing Hannah, season 2 of that, the Amazon show. So plenty of new content coming up. But thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.